YouTube comments, head coaching search news, and some good news from John Mechie.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Friday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than never before. Bet Online is where the game starts. Congratulations. You made it to another weekend, another Friday. I'm John Hickman. This is Cody Davis. We've all made it. We've had a crazy week. A head coach fired before Black Monday. A lot of rumors of who the Houston Texans want to interview. A lot of requests. Sean Payton, Ben Johnson, Jonathan Gannon. Demico Ryan's name is not off the list. The Houston Texans got some good news from a player, John Mechie, who they drafted in the 2022 NFL draft, who was diagnosed with leukemia. He's recovering well and looks like he'll be around quicker than what they expected for the offseason programming. You got some bad, you got some good. Cody, let's kick it off with, let's just have a good show today.
I wouldn't necessarily say nothing is bad. I think because we don't have to worry about watching no more football from the Houston Texans in 2022, 2023, however you want to look at this season, that's even good news. I think the only bad news is the fact that there is a man by the name of Lovie Smith who is out of a job. However, it's not all that bad because he's still on the team payroll. He get to kick off his shoes and relax his feet, and he's still gonna have money rolling in. But let's just look ahead at the Houston Texans coaching search as of right now.
He can kick off his shoes and relax his what?
Relax his feet.
Okay.
You thought I said what you thought I said?
Let's keep it going, man. Well, listen, Ben Johnson, they had the interview with Ben Johnson on Thursday.
Yes, sir.
Jonathan Gannon is coming up as well. What day is that, Cody?
Jonathan Gannon, the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, who was a top 3 candidate for this organization last year. He is going to have his interview on Saturday. Of course, as you guys know, with the Philadelphia Eagles in the middle of the playoffs, this will be a virtual interview. So if he makes it to the next round, then they will work something out to try to get him here in person. But John, as you alluded to, Ben Johnson, one head coaching interview has already been taking place. For those of you guys who don't know or who had missed the show, when John and myself looked at Ben Johnson as a possible candidate, he is the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. He went down there and basically helped Jared Goff reestablish his career in the league. This is a guy who has helped the Detroit Lions go from scoring 19 points per game to 26 points per game. They recorded 35 touchdowns last year to 54 this year. Last year, they recorded 320 first downs. This year, 376. This is one of those guys that, John, you was really high on. This is one of those guys where I like to see them go after this particular coach because, as I alluded to on yesterday or day before yesterday, you know, you can get a coach that is tied to a great player, i.e. when the Houston Texans hired Bill O'Brien a few years back. Everybody knows that the great player he was tied to was Tom Brady. Of course, the coaching tree, which, I mean, it's not really that impressive. I don't know what's wrong with his coaching tree, but at the end of the day, that was a guy that had learned everything from Bill Belichick. I like Ben Johnson because you can see that he's basically made a lot of improvements to a team that's a little bit similar to the Houston Texans, have not had that much success. However, with him as that team offensive coordinator, he really took the Detroit Lions offense to another level. If they do decide to go with him, John, I wouldn't be mad at it.
The Houston Texans have also requested to interview Rams assistant head coach and tight end coach Thomas Brown. So just to keep you guys updated on that, we got to dive into some of these comments, man. It's like I said, been a fun week for a lot of the Houston Texan fans, whether you are a fan on Twitter, or a fan on the, in the YouTube comments, or your own podcast. I think that this week has been full of interaction. There's been some positive interaction. There's been some not so positive interaction, but shout out to you guys, the listeners of the show that, pretty much kind of keep it positive, have a good time, have fun in those comments. But I do want to dive over to the comments right now. And Myron Benson can't feel bad for Lovey. He knew what he was getting into. He knew we didn't have the talent, but he chose to sign that blood contract. Defense and offense schemes were I'm going to go ahead and say it. The defense and offensive schemes were ass. Tampa 2 played out. It's been played out. So I don't care about the race car. He talked a good game, but didn't show it.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say he talked a good game because, like I said, everyone knew that a lot of politics went into the Houston Texans hiring Lovie Smith. John, you know me, I've been saying it a lot, and I'm going to say it again. Whatever they was planning when they departed from David Culley, it backfired on them, and I'm still under belief. I think this organization would have been in a better light had they kept David Culley for another season. However, everyone knew that Lovie Smith did not have the talent. However, no one, including myself, thought that the Texans under Lovie Smith's tenure could be just as worse, if not worse, than what we saw from David Culley in 2021. And I think that is where the biggest issue is. Like, I know nobody really had this team going to the playoffs. A lot of people like myself had this team winning somewhere in the ballpark, the 5 to 7 games. Nobody could ever imagine a team with Lovie Smith. I understand outside of his career with the Chicago Bears, it hasn't been that great. Didn't have success at Tampa. Did not have success on the collegiate level. Didn't have success in Houston. But I still find it hard to believe that a Houston Texans team under Lovie Smith won at least one less game than the Houston Texans team under David Culley.
Want to keep it with the Lovie Smith. My left hook is the name. My left hook. You guys get real creative with these YouTube names, man, and I love it. Thank you, Lovie Smith, for everything you did for us. Space. Chicago Bears, #1. Listen, and then shout out to one of my favorite YouTube commenters, our family here, Sarah McCoy. She commented and said, "or did to us." That's one thing I like about Sarah, man. Sarah really don't care about it. She gonna say what's on her mind, and I like that. Let's see what we got. Oh yeah, so my man, we talked about Sean Payton coming here to town. My man Brando, keep it 100. All right, Brando. Okay. I'm not giving up the number 12th overall pick for Sean Payton. I'm sorry, but we have too many hoes to be giving up draft capital for a coach.
Same thing I said.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. I think a lot of people, and we talked about this on Thursday, so I think a lot of people feel that way, honestly. You're going to get those in the crowd that want Sean Payton. And I think that Sean Payton, his name does more for this franchise as of right now. Of course, I could be wrong, but getting excited about Sean Payton, the name, I think is, what makes people want Sean Payton and even consider giving up one of those first-round picks. And, man, I think it was James on Twitter. He goes about Young Airy. He went down and broke it down like, Sean Payton with that one Super Bowl win. He's had some amazing seasons, but a lot of those seasons were never capped off with a real playoff run. Or then he had those moments where he was going 79 for consecutive years. And I think Sean Payton is a hell of a coach, but I don't think he's worth the number 12 overall pick.
You know who Sean Payton reminds me of? And
Kevin James.
No, you know, I see what you did. Now, I actually like that movie, by the way. I ain't gonna lie.
The idea of King and Queen playing somebody, Sean Payton, down established in New Orleans, man. I just thought that was why does Sean Payton need a movie? Why does Sean Payton and Kurt Warner need a movie anyways? I just thought that was weird.
No, Kurt Warner, I can see him because the way he became a Hall of Famer, that's pretty much a movie within itself. Sean Payton, don't know, but I actually like that movie. But what I will say is this, and if he gets traded to whatever team, it's going to be even more realistic. And I kind of hate to say this, but Sean Payton to me is the NFL version of Doc Rivers in the NBA. You have a head coach that's well respected, that knows the game of football, and in Doc Rivers' case, the game of basketball, has had a ton of success in the regular season, but they are still living off that one championship that they have. And when you remove that championship, even though I do believe that it possibly could have been another championship had they thrown that flag for that pass interference call a few years back, but I'm not going to talk about it. In the words of Lovie Smith, that's hypotheticals. We can't get into the hypotheticals, but I'm still hurt and upset about that. But that's still a coach that is still living off that one Super Bowl win, that is still a coach that is tied to at least one Hall of Famer in Drew Brees, just like Doc Rivers in a way. He is tied to, of course, the Celtics 2008, and he is tied to, regardless of all the players that he coached, at the end of the day, he's still tied to Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen. So I think that is the best way I could put it. And when I even think about Sean Payton in that light, just as a Houston Texans reporter, that definitely makes me say, no, I want somebody new. I want somebody fresh, rather that be Ben Johnson or rather that be Demico Ryan or whoever the case might be. But, you know, that's just the way I see things.
Speaking of Demico Ryan's got a couple of great things here, questions. So we're going to look at Demico Ryan's when we come back. Some more YouTube comments. It's Friday, y'all. Let's have a little fun after the up and down roller coaster week. That is the Houston Texans franchise. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experience to help you achieve your goals. It's super easy, super simple. And with LinkedIn Jobs, they help you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates out there. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. So let's make it super easy, super simple. Check out LinkedIn Jobs right now. It helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers out there. So, still in the YouTube comments right now, and truly unfortunate. Yeah, it's another name. You're on YouTube, and something's truly unfortunate. But they had a interesting question, and we hadn't necessarily talked about it. We mentioned it a couple of times and what that could possibly mean for the rejuvenation of the franchise. But how do you feel about Demico Ryan's, Cody?
I like Demico Ryan's. I mean, he's been a defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers for what, three seasons now, and
been a part of that coaching staff before being named DC. Robert Saleh was the DC before he left to New York.
That's right. So within those 2 seasons where he was a defensive coordinator, the San Francisco 49ers were top 3 in defense. That says a lot. And but it brings me back to another point. I see Demico Ryan's, I see Jonathan Gannon, and I'm looking at it from a standpoint of both of those guys have done a really good scratch that. They have done a damn good job with their respective organizations, building up the defense. I think the San Francisco 49ers, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they ended the season with the #1 rated defense. And then the Philadelphia Eagles was like 2 or 3, maybe 4, somewhere on that list. I remember seeing the list earlier because I wrote about it like a couple days ago. But at the end of the day, they were like top 3, top 5. So that gets me excited because, this defense, they could use a lot of help. However, John, in terms of what I would like to see in a coach, it kind of brings me back to the conversation you and I had early on in the week. You was a big fan of Ben Johnson. I'm a big fan of Mike Kafka. You're looking at both guys who help elevate 2 struggling organizations on the offensive side of the ball, one with the New York Giants, one with the Detroit Lions. And I really do believe that the Houston Texans really have to consider, do they want more so their head coach to be a defensive-minded coach or offensive-minded coach? And for me personally, even though I like Demico Ryan, once again, one of my favorite Texans of all time, I was a big fan of Jonathan Gannon last year during the coaching search. To me, I think because this Houston Texans offense has been so subpar, especially considering that this is a team that's going to likely draft either Bryce or CJ, I think it might be in the Texans' best interest to hire an offensive-minded head coach.
Man, and let's not also forget about Ejiro, the DC for Denver. And so I think ultimately, I think it comes down to, if we're looking at what we want is different for what we think the real considerations for the Houston Texans should be.
Oh yeah.
And I think ultimately it really does depend on how this team is going to attack this offseason, free agency, the draft.
That
now,
makes sense.
When we look at the draft, what's number 1? Quarterback. Then we look at getting options for your quarterback. And I'm still curious to see how the Houston Texans really do go about free agency. Of course, by the time free agency roll around, they will have their head coach, and then, whether or not Nick Caserio is around or they'll have a new GM in that role. But I think it ultimately does come down to how they view this free agency and draft class and how they feel like going about constructing a roster and how that can make this team better. I like Demico and I like what he's done for the 49ers, but that team defensively had studs on every level. And that team defensively was already great by the time Robert Saleh left. So he stepped into an amazing situation. I look at Ejiro for Denver, like that defense that he has rocking and rolling, that if it wasn't for that offense being just complete stinky, we may have a different conversation about the AFC playoff race. But they did a very good job of drafting those guys. When I look at Ben Johnson and Mike Kafka, both of those guys on the offensive side of the ball, they did a very good job with the guys that they drafted in their franchise. Well, Mike Kafka just got to New York this year with Brian Dable, but they did a very good job with the players that were already, kind of there. Right. And we look at some of the Daniel Jones is already there. Saquon Barkley, who was healthy this year, I think maybe shout out to my boy Phil, maybe the biggest silver lining of this offense being able to, put points on the board this year compared to last year. I hope to Saquon. But we do like what Mike Kafka was able to do with a depleted and one of the worst, in terms of talent-wise, worst wide receiving groups in the NFL. Right. So Cal McNair, and right now, Nick Caserio, whenever they do bring in these head coaches during these interviews, one question that I would love to hear if I was a fly on the wall, but one of their approaches should be, how much do you value X, Y, and Z during this free agency? How much do you value building up the wide receiver group? How much do you value building up this side of the ball? Because I think ultimately, whatever guy that they go with, that is what they're gonna, use, decide on that coach. But I'm not necessarily rocking with Demico Ryan's in Houston. I think that Demico should go to a situation that is much more stable than the Houston Texans, to say the least. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional sport and amateur league out there, from pro football, got you from college basketball, World Cup, NBA. They've got it all over at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts like the Locked On Texans podcast, you can find those over at BetOnline as well. We are always the fastest and easiest way to get your sports betting information. So head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. We got to talk about, if not the most inspiring story of the week, great news, good news, amazing news regarding to rookie wide receiver John Mechie, who was out his entire rookie year due to leukemia. According to general manager Nick Caserio, he is doing well. Nick Caserio had an opportunity to swing by 6'10" and had a guest spot with Seth Payne and Sean Pendergast on Sports Radio 610. And he said that, I say there's a chance he'll be ready for the start of the offseason program. He continued with, I think that, I think there are still some things that he has to complete or go through. But quite frankly, it's amazing what he's doing up to this point. First and foremost, football aside, glad that he's doing better. Glad that his health is day by day getting better. He's been able to go through the recovery process in the great city of Houston. But just to hear that he's kind of ahead of schedule, and Nick Caserio described him as a special player, a special young man. That's great news for John Mechie. I mean, it's great news for the Texans, but it's even better news for John Mechie to hear that he's doing well. And I'm not going to lie, I'm excited to see him out there on the field. I'm excited to see, how can I put it? I'm excited to see, and I know this is kind of funny because the Texans are looking at Ben Johnson, but I'm excited to see if John Mechie can be the Houston Texans St. Brown.
Man, I think he can, but I would say putting expectations on John, at least for this year, it's going to have to take a hold, man, because given everything that he has gone through over the past year, because you also got to keep in mind he was also recovering from the ACL injury, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it's been so long since we mentioned the ACL with him. I kind of almost forgot. I couldn't remember if it was an ACL or MCL, but I'm just gonna be so happy just to see him, just to see a survivor. Because like you said, John, look, at the end of the day, football aside, man, this is a young man who still has his whole life ahead of him. I think we all know how serious this disease can be. And, I had an opportunity to see him throughout the season every now and then. He used to go in the locker room and hang out with, a lot of his teammates. By the way, I always did like how all the rookies kind of like met up together, and it was like their own little path, their own little entity, as you like to say, John. But I had an opportunity to see John Mechie throughout the season. Of course, didn't see him like work out of anything. We couldn't speak to him given everything that he was dealing with. But even through all of that, in the midst of that, even when the news broke a couple weeks later, we had an opportunity to see him in training camp. His spirits was always high. He was always smiling. Every time he saw us, he was waving, smiling at us. I think he was teasing us because he knew that we wanted to speak to him. But once again, given everything that was going on, nobody could speak to him. But like I say, man, I just can't wait to hear his story, to share his story here on Locked On Texans on Sports Illustrated or whatever the case might be, man. I'm just so excited to see another survivor, man.
Well, I will say this, Nick Caserio's words in describing John Mechie, he looks better now than he did when we drafted him in the spring. He's improved his strength. He's improved his lower body strength. So by the time Houston really sees him out on their field against the opposite opponent in August, conversation of who's the number one receiver, may get hot. But thank you guys for checking out this Friday episode. Hey, man, enjoy the weekend. Have fun. It's MLK Day on Monday. I know what I'm not going to be doing. Yeah, I'm not going to be at work. I'm going to lift every voice and I'm going to sing. But make sure that you check us out each and every day here at the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube. Subscribe, like, and comment under Locked On Texans as well. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody COTYDVIS_24. Really quick, since Nick Caserio want to give updates on players, I want to update on Justin Britt. We haven't seen or spoken or heard anything about Justin Britt since September, the week 2, because he only played that one game. What the hell happened to Justin Britt? It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.